Hi, everyone. Pastor Galen, lead pastor at Shine Hills Church. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope that these podcasts will be a real encouragement to you on your spiritual journey. You can also connect with Shine Hills at shinehills.org. Hope you enjoy the program.
We are across the street and around the world. Cheyenne Hills.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. We got a really important topic today. I want to jump right into it. But First of all, welcome back, Nathan.
It's so good to see you.
So you were on, I don't know, South Carolina?
North Carolina.
I knew it was Carolina. And spoke to, tell us a little bit about that, because that's pretty fascinating. I just heard a little bit about it.
It was absolutely wonderful, called the Shepherds 360 Conference. And I was asked to speak on three topics, so three separate lectures this time. One of them was times when politics influenced the theology of the church, and that was a packed room. And the next one, though, was, I thought this would be such an esoteric topic, nobody would show up. Not only was the room packed, we had Dr. Erwin Lutzer and Dr. Larry Pettigrew. They're two heroes of mine. Yeah. And but it was called How Ethics in Scotland Influence the Founding of America. Wow. And so it was on the Scottish Enlightenment.
And isn't it wrapped in there? That's where common sense kind of came out of all that?
Yeah. The other term for Scottish Enlightenment is called the Scottish Common Sense Realism, the School of Common Sense Realism. Yeah. And that was not only wonderful, it has sparked a couple conversations with some more of my heroes I never thought I would ever meet. And that was wonderful. And then the last one was on the what is a book ban? Is that is it truly banning books? The other thing I really wanted to tackle was the question of whether Christians are influencing or imposing their will on others through these so-called book bans. And of course, the answer to that clearly is no. Not only that, the term book ban, which is in the news quite a bit lately, is absolutely improper. And we looked at the origins of that term through a group called PEN or PEN America. Okay. Well, yeah, because the book ban, we talked about this on our last podcast. Yeah. That's, that happened when you burned Bibles, back in the Hitler's era. Right. That's truly banning books and trying to eliminate. Right. We're not even coming close to that, but yet we're getting the tag. Right. Is that right? Well, with that in mind, I saw just in the news in the last week or so that a group of individuals showed up at the last school board meeting, supposedly reading banned books, in the audience. Well, here's the thing. Look at the incongruity of that image.
It's not banned, just right in front of them.
It's not only not banned, they're reading it in front of God and everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And the whole point is this is what we call a pseudo event from Daniel Borston. Yeah. But we see the evidence of it all around us, and it's like they cannot understand the irony of what they're doing in the moment.
Yeah, because what we're after is really what I want to talk about. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the news. I brought a newspaper with me. This was October 20th, so this is when it came out in Wyoming Tribune-Eagle. And on the front page here is Superintendent Megan Degenfelder.
That's right.
And Megan went to Washington, D.C., and I called you and I said, did you know about this? And of course you did, and you had already talked to her. Mm-hmm. And I'd like for you to recap a little bit about really what I want to feature is I'm talking about people with courage. We're talking, standing for us and we need to get behind people that are standing for the innocence of children.
That's right.
Megan went to Washington, D.C. and stood for the innocence of children. And I wanted to just raise her name to the top of the flagpole and say, guys, you need to know what she did. So that's what I want to feature. Tell me about, I know you talked with her. How did that go? And what was that experience like?
Well, not only that, we're going to have Megan speak at the summit we're having on November the 3rd and 4th.
Okay.
She will be speaking on the 4th. And that is here in Cheyenne. And so if people want to know more about that, please come to our website, Wyoming Family Alliance. The first thing you'll see is a pop-up that comes up, and it just asks you, this is a free event.
Okay.
And we want people to come.
Want people to show up.
Want people to show up. It is absolutely free. The dinner the evening before is also free as well. Okay. But all that to say, Megan has done a phenomenal job. And I should say, forgive me if that is presumptuous, the superintendent has done a phenomenal job of pointing out the challenges that Wyoming families are facing.
Right.
And she reported to Congress. She made the statement, she said, the number one concern that Wyoming families are expressing to her is concern over sexually graphic books in our school libraries.
Yeah.
And I think that she's done a great job of highlighting that.
Well, and we've been saying that for some time. And I think I've said it a few times here. It's like people probably think, well, he's just a pastor, and so he's too super sensitive to things. And I just love the way she described things. There are books available, paid for by taxpayer dollars, with graphic description of sexual acts that are made available to minor children, Degenfelder said. Graphic and erotic images are not suitable for minor children and are complete misuse of taxpayer dollars. That's pretty straightforward. And that's exactly what we've been trying to say. It's like the reason we are for the opt-in, one of the reasons is gives the power back into the parents to decide. And also, hopefully, it will cause parents to look for themselves.
Right.
Don't take my word, your word. You go look at these books and see if this is not exactly how Megan described it to Congress. Okay, I got a question about this. What was the purpose of going to Congress? I mean, she's the Wyoming superintendent. What was that purpose of that trip?
Well, I think she did a great job because the Biden administration has really reached out to try to impose their will, essentially, through the administrative state on education across the country.
Okay.
And so when she goes back to report to Congress on how this is playing out here in real life here in Wyoming, what she was able to do is point at these policies and the great damage that they've caused. And so she made here's what she said. The Biden administration announced in June that they were going to appoint a book ban coordinator to warn schools of, and here's what the Biden administration said, book bans that can violate federal civil rights law if they create a hostile environment for students. Now, one of the things that she's been able to talk about is how that has created massive conflict because these are not, first of all, real book bans.
Right.
Secondly, it is a viewpoint. It is not a viewpoint neutral position.
Right.
And so when we talk about, I appreciate her statement that we need to get back to actually educating children.
Oh, no kidding. And that's what our taxpayer dollars should be going toward, that, and not these sexual acts and graphic depictions of sexual acts. Yeah. Okay, so it seems like to me, though, there's this debate out there, and because I've talked to people on the other side of this, and they basically say, yeah, but it's educational material, therefore these graphic depictions are okay. And I'm thinking, no, these are graphic depictions of sexually explicit material in the hands of minors. It's completely different, but some people don't see that. I still struggle to try to look through that person's lens and go, how can you not see that this they see it as education, I see it as pornographic material.
Agreed.
What's their lens? What's that side looking at that I'm missing?
Right. Well, so okay.
And also, sorry about this, but they've also stated this is supported by the United States Supreme Court. They've got that behind them.
Right. Well, first of all, that is it's the clash of two particular worldviews. So let's answer. True. You have two questions there.
That's true.
The first one is there's a clash of two different worldviews. Some individuals are essentially known to be Marxist, and so they're using the sexual revolution to advance a Marxist idea. And so you have to understand that driving the impetus for their involvement in the conversation is that they have a secondary agenda. It's probably their primary agenda, but they're using this secondary issue to drive their primary agenda. And that is the understanding, what they would believe is that the government is the one that has the right to educate your child, and it's not the responsibility of the parent. And what they want is, and sometimes this is the reason why they pursue PhDs and want people to call them by their doctor title and all those other things, is because they want to give the aura of the expert. And so just recently, someone was talking about how often the radical left will use the term experts say. And what they mean by expert is someone who has maybe pursued a degree, but they actually have no interaction, no experience with children.
Right.
And so as a result, for instance, years ago, a man by the name of Dr. Spock back in the 1960s, wrote a book on how to train up children, in which he was saying, that he was speaking against corporal punishment and all these other different things. Yeah. And come to find out, the man had no children. He had no interaction with children. And you wonder, why in the world do we have so many entitled children today? Yeah. It is because certain philosophies have come up. So let me just say that an individual who might call themselves Dr. So-and-so, that often should cause you to step back and ask, okay, so how has he been educated? Has he been miseducated? Yeah. Is he trying to push his miseducation on the minds of other people?
Well, so this is a play between this, if you want to call it the elite educated versus common sense that we just talked about, right?
Exactly.
Isn't that, that's the clash of two.
Right.
It's the definition of the two worldviews.
That's exactly right.
It's really good.
And this is how it plays out in real time in situations in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Okay.
And so when we look at all of those things, when you have groups like the American Library Association and groups like PEN America, who characterize restrictions on school libraries and books as authoritarian, and here's your scare quotes, book banning.
Yeah.
What we have here, what they say is that's a alarming attack on free expression. Well, let's just say this, that what they have are government employees that are curating books and saying that you should read these books, and they're calling that people who would object to having pornography as someone who's standing against free expression. Yeah. Free expression of whom and what in what? And so we have individuals with a clear agenda who are trying to put stuff in the hands of your children and then saying that any objection to that. Now, mind you, we've also said this before, that when we have these books placed in the hands of children, when a parent simply calls the school and says, I have concerns regarding this book, PEN America says that is book banning.
Yeah.
What that means is that they have redefined banning as something that is clearly not banning.
Right.
And we've said that before, but this is...
I think you've brought to the fore a really important, some of the terminology, and you've helped me understand I understand there's two worldviews, but sometimes I go, I was interviewing this one person one time, and it's like, you really don't see that as pornographic literature?
Right.
And he fired right back and said, no, that's this is educating children. I've had my own kids educated like this. And it's like, well, I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree, because we are on two different wavelengths on what is appropriate for children. And so I think people out there that are listening to us, that's why I want you to know this stuff. This is the worldview, and I don't think they're going to change, and I don't think they look at life through common sense or reason or any kind of a biblical worldview. It is maybe it's a Marxist ideology that they're after, and trying to authoritarian type power play of some kind. That's the best explanation I've heard, actually. That helps my head to say, okay, well, how can you not see this? But anyway, that's what I think is out there. Now, let's go back to Megan, because I think she did something that I think, to have somebody on her level, this is a courageous move. I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to disagree with this move. And one of the things I want people to hear is I want them to, if you agree, obviously, I want you to, fire off an email to Megan and say, hey, thank you so much for being strong for our kids, because she's doing some really strong things here. And those kind of people need our support, I believe. That's right. So that's one of my whys that I wanted to have this discussion today, is like, the church needs to show up for this kind of acts of valor, in my opinion. And so I want to read the final thing she says. This issue of sexually explicit material in schools must be addressed so that we can return our focus to the fundamental purpose of education and regain trust in public education, she told members of Congress. When did the protecting of our children become so controversial? Like, man, that just reeks with common sense, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like,
that's a great question.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I think one of the things that we constantly talk about at Wyoming Family Alliance and then the Family Policy Alliances across the country is this. A statesman is an individual who will do what's right regardless of the personal consequence. They state truth. They state what needs to be said. Yeah. They're speaking into the culture, trying to actually be helpful and useful and advocate for truth in a fallen world. And I think that question, that statement, is exactly what we're looking at. We would call that statesmanship.
Yeah, for sure.
And we need to see more of that.
I agree.
And not only that, when we talk about someone who is willing to stand in front of Congress and make a statement like that, they need to hear from people who care and say, great job. Oftentimes, when we look at politics, people will always complain about the negative, but rarely do they come behind and affirm the positive.
Yeah.
And so that is a good thing for people to do.
Very important. I mean, I'm preaching on Esther this week, and it's like this is an Esther moment for her, I think.
For such a time as this.
She did. She stepped up and stood for. And remember what Esther told the people, and told Mordecai, her uncle, right? She said, you go fast and pray, and I will fast and pray, and then maybe God will give us favor in this such a time as this, and God certainly did give Esther favor. I hope and pray that this is not only an Esther moment, but an Esther type of impact. But we on the outsides of the castle, so to speak, we need to be encouraging and praying and holding up people that are on the inside, be able to speak powerfully. Truth to power. That's not easy to do, and she did it. So big kudos and thanks to Megan on my behalf, and I hope several of you get behind this. I hope there's a way. Do you know, just off the cuff, how do we get a hold of? How could we email her or something? How could we send off a message to
If you
Megan?
simply Google Superintendent of Wyoming, Superintendent of Public Education in Wyoming, there's a website there.
And then probably an email address.
That's right.
And
just a simple email to say thank you.
I hope you'll hear this, and I hope you'll take the advantage of this. I'm going to send off just a thank you, Megan, and I hope to have her in here someday. You said it's possible, maybe after this November 3rd and 4th is going to be a big event that you have coming up.
That's right.
And I don't know if she's a keynote, but she's going to be a speaker.
Yeah, that's right.
And,
one of three on Saturday, and we really. We've tried to make this a kind of thing. It's about education in Wyoming and education freedom in Wyoming.
Okay. We're
going to discuss things like charter schools and education savings accounts, and just the need for us to be more aware of our education.
That's huge.
For a long time, people have just relied upon the so-called experts. But now that we see that there are groups of so-called experts who have a very clear political agenda, what we need to do is step back into our proper role and say, listen, these are my children, and I'm going to bring them up the way that they ought to be brought up, and as a result, I'm going to be involved in their education.
That speaks volumes. People, even have a different worldview. They also are politicians, and they see a gathering crowd of people. They say, okay, wait a minute, we might want to change our messaging here because there's a group behind this. So I do hope you will take this challenge and fire off an email to encourage Megan Degenfelder. But tell us one more time, how can someone come meet you and Megan and others that are involved with the school? It's November 3rd and 4th.
That's right. And
tell us a little bit about it. No cost. Where's the location?
Yeah. So what we'd like to do is just, first of all, I want to point out this is a free event.
Okay. And
all they need to go is type in fightforwyoming.com.
Okay.
And that will take them to the Heritage Wyoming Family Alliance website, and they can, space is limited. We need people to register as soon as possible.
Okay.
And so it is free. It includes meals, very nice meals. The Friday night dinner is really high end.
Okay.
And but what we really want people to do is register for that so that we will know how much food to order and all those things.
Gotcha. Sure.
And that's why we're kind of pushing a deadline here. But as people come, know that evening, Dr. Kevin Roberts, who has some roots here in Wyoming, he's now the president of the foremost conservative public policy think tank in America, based in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
He's going to be here. He took time out of his very busy schedule. I found out some of the people he's been speaking to. He literally is coming from a meeting with a governor to come to Cheyenne, Wyoming, to spend time with us to talk about the role of conservatism, the importance of it in Wyoming. Then the next day, we're going to have a meeting there and talk about education and the need for education freedom in Wyoming. And so it's an education summit.
Sounds like a fantastic event. I hope people will check that out, sign up, show up. Great place to encourage some people that are really out there on the front lines. You're one of them. And thanks for being out there.
What a joy.
Well, these are the people. We talk about it, to be strong and very courageous. We got some people right in this studio, right in Megan Degenfelder in our elected office of superintendent. Let's get behind them, church. God bless you all. Thanks.